Who buys that other share?
Well, it's ultimately all going to go to, Comineer and Zijin. They're the aligned parties in this one against AVZ.
So that's a possible outcome that Zijin will have that 15%.
I see that as the more likely outcome. I mean, there's still another angle where AVZ want to retain and reap the reward of the economics of this project through to the end.
It's hard to imagine that being the case with this sort of relationship with the host country.
Exactly.
All right, g'day, Money Miners. 13th of June, Tuesday. Now, first, before we get into it, there was a very unfortunate event, a fatality at the Onslow Iron Project. So, look, on behalf of all of us, thoughts are with all the workers, family, friends, and colleagues of this man. Also, both thoughts with MinRes and the contractor who he was employed with. So, yeah, very sad news for the industry. Thinking of yous all up there. So, JD, welcome back, Cobber.
Thanks,
you
Matty.
are back in town, mate.
Yeah, excited to be back in town. Back
How
on the
was
show.
Africa?
It was unreal. Can't recommend it enough to anyone thinking of going out there. Just do it. Pull the trigger.
Just don't buy a lithium project in over there.
No, we'll get into that, won't we?
We are going deep into AVZ territory. Trav and JD have been heavily in the weeds. This is going to be sensational. Trav.
Hey, mate.
How are you, Cobber?
It's no surprise, right, that JD comes back from Africa and he wants to spend the whole episode talking about Africa.
Was that my suggestion?
You didn't go visit the Manono lithium project while you were there, JD?
I didn't make it up to the Congo, but we were actually a bit spoilt for choice looking back. There's quite a bit to talk about today.
There is, right. We better get into it because we're going to go heavy into AVZ. We're going to give the news of the day straight up. Now, first up, we've got Glencore. They've made a bid for Teck's met coal unit. So that comes after Glencore. They were unable to acquire Teck fully. They did in the process halt Teck's attempt to, I think they were going to split out the coal division from copper business. So
a lot going on there. They really got themselves in the middle of that one, stopped the business splitting up into a metals co and Elk Valley, which was going to be the met coal business. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think there might be a few other parties circling.
I think, and Glencore feature again today. So a bit more SPAC activity over in Brazil. So you've got the mining SPAC ACG acquisition co. So they're London listed. So they've agreed to buy the Atlantic Nickel and Mineração Valverde. I actually Googled that, how to pronounce it.
Superb, mate.
I don't know if I got Val. Is it Vale? So that's their operations in Brazil. So they're purchasing that from the private equity group Appian for US $1 billion. So ACG, the reason why Glencore's linked to this, ACG, they're the acquirer. They're backed by Glencore, the La Mancha Resource Capital, they're a mining fund, and Stellantis. So those three mobs alone, ACG will own 51% combined once complete, and the rest.
ACG will entirely own the assets, and then those groups that you mentioned,
and the rest is free float, 49% free float. So look, the assets include in this deal the Santa Rita nickel sulfide project and the Sarote, probably got that wrong, copper mine. So
were these the ones that Appian tried to sell last year?
Yeah, so Sibanye Stillwater, the South African group, they'd agreed to purchase these, and then there was a geotechnical event sometime last year, and then they pulled out.
Before completion, but after the agreement.
Exactly. Yeah. So in turn, we saw Appian, the group trying to sell them, sue Sibanye for not going through with the transaction.
But it'd be a material adverse event, you would have thought. So, yeah.
Absolutely. You'd have to agree with that. But, yeah, I'm not sure how it really reflects on Appian suing the party that's what they're sort of in the business with, but
they're in the business of selling assets. So it's not good to take.
Well, a bit of, I guess, to link it up to how this might impact some stocks on the ASX. So look at what this Santa Rita, that's the nickel sulfide project. So they produced nearly 16,000 tonne of nickel, 2021, 5,000 tonne of copper. So and their gold project, they produce 20,000 tonne of copper and 9,000 ounces of gold. So look, bit of commentary from Argonaut saying that this is a good sign for Centaurus because they're developing the Jaguar nickel sulfide project in Brazil, and so they're projected to produce in excess of 20,000 tonne. So Santa Rita produced 16,000 tonne, and they're converting that into a nickel sulfate. So they've got a 15-year mine life and a high payability. So good news for them if there's a bit of activity going on in Brazil. So
agreed.
Watch out there. IGO, they've also appointed a new CEO, Ivan Vella, following their extensive search since the unfortunate passing of Peter Bradford late last year. So Ivan, where's he come from, boys?
20 years at Rio, we read. So he's currently the head of the aluminium business there. And I think by December or by January, he'll start in the hot seat at IGO.
December, yeah. Rio put out their own announcement on his departure as well. So must be an important person there.
IGO going for the big company man by the looks. Let's bit of rare earth news. Plenty actually from Hastings, Dreadnought and Lindian. So Hastings, they've entered a header of agreement with NEO, outlining a framework for the parties to negotiate a binding commercial offtake for the supply of rare earth concentrate from their stage one of their Yangibana project. So that was what we talked about last week when that was split up, wasn't it, Trav? They were splitting up the development into stage one and stage two.
Mate, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, they're... Neo, keep in mind, Neo is this sort of downstream magnet producer. So you send your rare earth NdPr product there, and they basically convert it to these products for magnets. And before, like last year, Wailu actually provided a convertible note to Hastings for Hastings to acquire 19.9% of Neo. So Hastings saw merit in putting the two businesses together. I don't think they've been able to do that to date, but they've got this sort of offtake. Or an agreement to have an offtake sort of converted in relation to some of their supply. Like you said, they're breaking down into stage one and stage two. Stage one, they're going to produce just a concentrate, and then stage two, they're building a hydromet plant, and they're going to produce a mixed rare earth carbonate there.
I think we're going to see more and more of that. That was just on the back of a huge cost blowout that they split them into stage one and two, wasn't it?
Well, they announced the capex had gone up as part of also announcing it being staged capex. The share price fell off like in line with it, and the share price is off again today. But you also saw two directors buying shares on market, so they're seeing value there, and maybe some of the value to be had is in what the commercial realities of an arrangement could be with a downstream partner such as Neo. And the interesting thing to me was the arrangement, or it's an agreement, it's not binding at this stage, but it paves the framework to convert it to something binding. But it actually covers up to 70% of the production in the first 10 years from stage one and stage two. And in my mind, I'm kind of wondering how Iluka's proposed any other refinery might sort of pave into any remaining production there, because they've obviously got room for additional feed in that proposed refinery, and I would have thought Hastings could be one of the sources of feed there.
Yeah, but now Dreadnought up in the same area, so they've released first assays from their extensional drilling. So in addition to theirs, so they got a 3 kilometre long inferred resource, so they've extended that by a kilometre. So they're looking for another resource update coming June, July, so imminent, and another one coming in December 23 quarter. So
I think like there's a bunch happening in that Gascoyne region from a rare earth perspective. A lot of junior companies are putting out results. Dreadnought's one with a pretty substantial market cap. I think it's $180 million market cap now, and they've actually got an existing resource there, and which has reasonable grade. It's not a TREO or TRIO, as you told me, Matty, that's quoted in parts per million. That's actually quoted in percentage, which is always a telling sign.
Yeah, very much so. Now, who wants to do the next one? Because I can't pronounce the K word.
Lindian Resources has kicked off the design work stream for its stage one processing plant at its Kangankunde rare earths project in Malawi. You guys familiar with this one?
Not heaps, mate, but
we had a brief chat with the guys at Precision, and they spoke quite favourably of the stock and what they've got going on in Malawi. So stage one is indicated as a small throughput plant, 220,000 tonnes per annum, and simply producing a monzonite concentrate. CapEx and OpEx to be finalised in early 24. So within the next year, they're trying to seal up the CapEx and OpEx side of things, which indicate in 12 months construction and commissioning highlighted to begin quarter 4 next year. So,
yeah, and it's like a $400 million market cap.
Yeah, so
company,
big 18 months coming up for the company.
Malawi, more your territory, JD.
That's why he could pronounce it. He's got the African lingo
fresh from
ready to
Africa.
go.
We posed the question to Clates, I think, when we spoke with him 3 weeks ago, and he said Malawi stands out, amongst Africa as one of the better jurisdictions. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that one.
Bates didn't mind Africa. He said there's Africa, then there's Africa.
Yeah.
So he's obviously a fan of places like that.
Just like there's Congo and there's Congo, as we'll find out.
Yeah.
No, there's just Congo, I think. Now, Rox Resources, they had some more results from its You and Me gold project. So third batch of assay results received. Ongoing best results, 6.4 metres at 4.5 grams. 4 metres at 5.7, about 250 to 380 metres down hole. So now the big rise for the day, final one, has come from AVZ Minerals, AZS. So they're up 32% after hitting 105 metres at 1.26% lithium oxide, and that was 256 metres down hole. They've got 60% ownership of this Andover project in the West Pilbara, and look, they've interpreted this 256 metres down hole to line up with an outcrop at the surface, so something to watch there.
Still a bit of frothiness in the market. I think at one point they were up 70-odd%.
Oh, really?
So,
Yeah, and they've talked about the base metals strategy there, and $300 million market cap now, which is, interesting.
There you go. Right. AVZ, our 3 favourite letters for the day. Deep dive number 2. So we did cover it early on. That got us a few new subscribers. There's a whole there's a big forum and network of people on the net in this. So look, and
Big one, mate.
big one, and a lot of people with shitloads of money probably still tied up in it since it's been suspended in trading. So, look, who wants to give the overview, boys? I'm not going to take the glory off you because you did such a bloody good job of researching this. Lead it away, JD, I guess for people that have just might not have heard of this, because I'm sure there is some.
Yeah, that's
just
it.
Give a brief scope of what's going on here.
We'll give it
AVZ.
a bit of context. So we spoke about it I think 5 or 6 weeks ago now. So they've got under question the Manono project in the DRC. So
They've got some portion of it. The portion is unknown.
Exactly. So why this might be of note, they reached a market cap of $4.6 billion. They were a member of the ASX 200. So that would have been late 21, early 2022. And they've been in suspension since May of 2022. So that's over a year now. And at the time they went into suspension, they'd come off a bit, but they were still capped at $2.7 billion. So
Huge money.
I suppose for people who want to know, how could someone be capped that big in exploration? So they host what is, I'm pretty sure, definitively the biggest hard rock lithium resource in the world. So they had a resource of 400 million tonnes at 1.65%. So to give a bit of comparison, so in 2021, Greenbushes, which is the flagship in Australia, or was the flagship in the world,
worldwide,
so that was 360 million tonne at 1.5%. And Pilbara Minerals there, Pilgreen Gora, is at 2021 was 309 million tonne at 1.14. So, and these guys have got 400. So it is
Mate,
big.
you weren't even reading notes then. You've rolled that off the top of your head.
I remember it from last time.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there are
everyone
a
knows
few.
that's not true.
There are a few points that we raised last time that kind of stood out to us about this company. So one of them being what we sort of perceived as poor governance, consistently coming out with reports at 6 p.m. on a Friday, not keeping the shareholders updated, a lot of queries and taking months to answer ASX queries.
They've continued that Friday thing too, haven't they, JD?
They sure have. Relatively high exec remuneration. And again, we flagged a lot of this is obviously given in stock, which is in limbo. They can't sell that at the moment. But I think between the 8 executives that the annual report highlighted, there was nearly $14 million in compensation for an exploration play. That's quite hefty. And we raised the question of whether they should even be in suspension, which we're going to get into a bit more later on. So Yeah, like we sort of said, they did their usual again and came out with an announcement at 6 p.m. last Friday. And
Aftermarket, they love it. They love the aftermarket Friday announcement.
yeah, we'll chuck up.
I know we're going to talk about it when they do that.
Because no one will notice AVZ putting out an announcement.
Yeah, not slipping past us. And it was a bit of a mouthful, wasn't it, Trav? This one, what they came out with, a lot of legal terminology.
Yeah.
So AVZ plus Dathcom have jointly commenced arbitration against the DRC. So that's the country. So Dathcom is a 100% owner in Manono.
So that's the head company, and then AVZ owns a percentage of that.
Exactly
but that
right.
head company has the rights to the project.
Exactly right. So the suit claims that the DRC acted unlawfully in not issuing a mining license to Dathcom and in turn to AVZ to develop the project. And this has been lodged with the International Centre for Settlement of Investment Disputes. So
ICSID.
That's how you say it?
So this is different to the International Court of Arbitration, for which they've been before, different setup.
Yes, I think that one might be Switzerland based, and this one's based in Washington, DC. So a couple of highlights from the one pager today. The main purpose of the arbitration request is to seek various remedies for the DRC's failure to comply with its own mining code, and the company considers the conduct of the DRC to be unlawful. So there was another announcement.
Deal, right? When you go through the process of international arbitration at ICSID, it's like it's a pretty big and
it's huge,
big thing to do.
Yeah, so we'd seen an announcement on the 15th of May as well, hadn't we? So AVZ announcing that Zijin, the Chinese group, and Communier, which is the sort of belongs to the government of the Congo, they were seeking damages totaling $850 million US and $566 million US respectively, plus a termination of the Dathcom joint venture agreement, which, like we mentioned, has control over the asset.
So what's the context of?
Yeah, so the history of that wasn't so, correct me if I'm wrong, Communier went to sell a portion, the Congolese government-owned mining company went to sell a portion of the project to this Zijin Mining, and then Zijin claimed that ownership.
So AVZ claimed that they had the first right of refusal over that 15% stake, which was sold to Zijin. So they are disputing that Zijin is the rightful owner of that 15%. And there is also another 15% portion of ownership in Dathcom under question.
Yeah, they basically, their AVZ's perspective is that per the shareholders agreement in Dathcom, they have a right of first refusal over any sale interest. Now there was a sale conducted or share transfer certificate issued, and AVZ claimed that they didn't have a right over that and deemed it sort of unlawful and also immaterial for the purpose of continuous disclosure, based on the fact that their shareholders agreement deemed it unlawful, and also that the DRC's mining code has to respect a right of first refusal to actually enable a change of ownership too.
And that was obviously in one of the cases. There's been numerous cases. That was the one that was in the International Court of Arbitration.
Yeah, it was progressing to the International Court of Arbitration. So some of the language that AVZ used, like you sort of touched on there, Trav, AVZ considers the claims by Zijin and Communier to be spurious in nature, without merit, containing fundamental and material errors, and having no substance or foundation in fact or law. So strong wording.
Pretty interesting, mate. It's you look at this and you read the announcement, and there's a few the first thing you look at when you see they're going down the pathway of ICSID is you just think this is going to take a long time. If they see it through to the end, this could take a really long time to get an outcome.
100%. So we'll unpack the talking points that we've sort of come up here, and that's number one, isn't it? We did a bit of digging, and on average these things take 3 years and 7 months. Some of the examples went up to 10 years. This is not a quick process by any means, is it?
So if Zijin and Communier are seeking damages at the moment, where did, I guess, the arbitration proceedings get to of Zijin now saying they don't own this portion? Now they're seeking damages because of that. Where's all that at?
I
guess that's what's all up in the air.
I think the way I'd interpret this piece, Matty, is there's the world of international arbitration, it's not just like ICSID, there's other elements of arbitration. And what this looks like is an escalation of that. And it's a move made by AVZ. And it probably what it does is the fact that they're going to ICSID, it actually elevates their position of negotiation for a settlement, I think. And we can get to that a bit down the track.
So ZGINA is saying if we are not going to get our portion of the ownership, we want you to pay us $850 million US.
Yeah, I think the litigation that you're seeing from ZGIN and also Common Near, that probably lends itself more to sort of textbook negotiation strategy. They're building a case to get the best possible outcome in a potential settlement, I would imagine. Yeah. I'm not sure how justified their claims are.
Yeah, I think that's a good sort of lens to view it through. Another thing we should mention is the funding situation. Like, this is dragging on for quite a while. You can't imagine they're going to do a capital raise. So they've still got 27 million in the tin. So they've got a bit of money to continue to fund these legal proceedings. They actually still were spending a bit on exploration as of the last quarter. So you can easily see when it comes to a bit more of a crunch period, when they get to the sort of end of that funding, they'll wind down the exploration, I'd imagine, and just really focus on, paying the lawyers so they can have a good legal fight.
And if it's like the weird world of international arbitration, there are these sort of litigant funders who can come into the mix, and the way it all sort of works is there's a probability outcome associated with arbitration. Sometimes there's a settlement involved, but litigant funders are basically ultimately financed by the probability of that payoff, and that takes a slice of economics away from shareholders.
Yeah, I guess their business model, in a sense, is similar to the class action lawsuit that hasn't been launched yet, but is, there's rumours about it. Like, this is something that comes up quite often, but the position that they'll pay it up front and they'll take a potential slice of the winning is a similar type of business model, isn't it?
Yep.
Right. So, should AVZ be trading?
Yeah, they haven't been trading for a long time. And another question is, what would happen if they restarted trading? That'd be very interesting.
Chaos, I think. But yeah, it's a really interesting one, and I can see both sides of the argument. Some of the wording with regard to why they're not trading that AVZ used a couple months ago was that it couldn't comply with listing rules around disclosure, partly because the DRC is a challenging mining jurisdiction and its government's intentions are too unclear to warrant disclosure. So what they're really saying is that they wouldn't be able to meet the ASX's continuous disclosure requirements, and hence they're not trading at all. What do you guys think of that?
I think for them to mount an argument based on upholding the continuous disclosure ruling is a bit, a bit of a stretch, given they've questionably sort of been in breach of that one themselves. So I can see the strategy for them to not be trading, and I think that probably lends itself to negotiation for a settlement, which again we'll get to, but I don't. I think there's a whole bunch of vested interests here, right? There's the interest of shareholders, there's the interest of the Congo, there's the interest of ZGIN, there's the interest of short sellers, there's the interest of so many different parties that just kind of, it's a little bit murky. And I don't think that, I think it all comes down to what is the real information here, and do shareholders actually have that yet?
Yeah, agreed. I don't think AVZ are making all the effort in the world to try and be, trading at the moment, and that's obviously what they think is in the interest of their shareholders and of the company.
I still think if I was a shareholder, would I want to be able to trade my shares? I think I would, only if, but assuming that all of the information is out there. If all of the information is out there, then
that's
I would.
That's a big if as well.
But if they started trading with someone, because they would obviously they're wanting to maintain ownership, but this being out of trading is locking it up for them essentially.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
I don't know. Would anyone want to take it over after all this?
No, I don't think it's got to do with the control element of the asset. I think it probably just has more to do with, because I mean, for their position, right? How are they actually really going to operate this? They've got hostile relationship with the government. There's, in no world is that, are they going to have a good social license to ever be operator of this mine? So I think the only real eventual outcome here is a settlement. Yeah.
And they wouldn't get funding from Zijin, you wouldn't think, after all this, especially with only 20 million bucks in the bank.
Yeah, I think that naturally flows into what we think is going to happen. And like you said, sort of settlement, I think we can kind of agree that's going to be the ultimate outcome of this case.
So what's the settlement? What happens in the settlement? Who has to fund the damage payment? Do they have to then sell the asset to fund the damage payment?
Let's talk about all of that stuff goes away in a settlement, right? Because you've basically got like the Zijin is aligned with common near on this one, and then there's also a potential class action. I would imagine you can reach a sort of agreement where those litigation angles disappear in a settlement, right? That's just. But at the exact same time, AVZ's lodgement with ICSID for an arbitration ruling would also disappear, right? You don't have to see the international arbitration through all the way to the end. They might just think the strategy for them to get a best possible outcome here is to put the pressure on by lodging this thing at Washington DC, and then all of a sudden now they're in a better position to reach a settlement. And and by all means, it looks like they have a case, right? Like there's probably a shareholders agreement which has been breached. There's a mining code which appears to not have been lived up to stringently. And there's and the other thing too is they actually still have majority interest of the project. If you look at other precedent cases that have gone down the pathway of international arbitration at ICSID, you can think of Sundance, you can think of Equatorial. Now they're in the other Congo, which is often talked about as the good Congo. They're in the other Congo. And in both of those cases, the assets that they had were actually fully expropriated from the government. So that's a completely different situation because you don't have any more negotiating leverage if your entire asset's been taken. You have to go down the full pathway of international arbitration and wait for them to actually sort of rule you as a valid kind of having a valid claim there.
Yeah, and they were suing for a pile of money. They didn't want the mining license to the projects. They were suing for damages, weren't they?
Yeah, and in this instance, because this international arbitration sort of lodgement, because they still own the majority interest of the project, it might be more of a preventative measure to prevent what looks to be probable expropriation in the future. But in my mind, there's still going to be a really hostile relationship with the government as a result of it. And I think the best possible outcome that they could want is selling that remaining interest in the project in exchange for a pile of cash. And at the same time, all of the litigation goes away too. And so whatever the shareholders in that situation would have some entitlement to the pile of cash that they get. And from that perspective, if you think settlement is the ultimate goal, you can actually kind of understand why they wouldn't want to be trading right now. Because in the negotiation process, the other side simply just points to a lower share price to argue a lower see-through value on what their share of the project is. So
who buys that other share?
Well, it's ultimately all going to go to Comineer and Zijin. They're the aligned parties in this one against AVZ.
So that's a possible outcome that Zijin will have that 15%.
I see that as the more likely outcome from a settlement process. I mean, there's still another angle where AVZ want to retain and see and reap the reward of the economics of this project through to the end. And I imagine they'll keep their real intentions close to their chest. But
it's hard to imagine that being the case with this sort of relationship with the host country.
Exactly.
So another interesting point is that just the polarizing nature of this story. Depending on what source you read, you're going to get very, very different points of view and interests, aren't you? So
depends who's being fed what.
Exactly. So you look at the AFR and they seem to have a bit of a bias. They're much more on the side that AVZ hasn't done right by their shareholders.
Yeah.
And as always, I think it just sort of pays to look at where the information's coming and what the incentives are.
Yeah, I mean, like Tom Richardson, who's been covering it, he's I think it's easier to point a finger at poor corporate governance, and we've done that ourselves. But it's easier to point a finger at poor corporate governance than it is to point a finger at a nation state. And at the same, but like I'm not sure if we can really take Tom Richardson's words with a lot of like gravity, given the fact that in one instance he didn't even get the country right. He put up a photo of the wrong Congo. I'm not sure he knew there were 2 Congos out there, but he uploaded a photo of the wrong Congo in the article.
Yeah, it's not a great look, that one. So another takeaway that I think is worth discussing, the corporate governance. Obviously, we spoke about this last time, but yeah, I'm still not convinced it's completely up to scratch. We'll chuck up a screenshot of their history of when they put up announcements, and you can see the majority of them just come at 5 or 6 p.m, frequently on a Friday as well. So.
Yeah, and it's not that they're trading, but it basically just minimises the amount of press coverage if you drop it at that time.
Yeah, if it sort of stays under wraps. So another point worth talking about is the current climate in the DRC and in African countries more broadly. So we saw Glencore pay $180 million fine, I think in December of last year, and that was to settle corruption cases.
Yeah, they admitted bribery to officials of the DRC between, I think it was 2007 and 2018, and yet their fine that they ended up having to pay also went to the DRC.
Yeah. Work that one out. I can't quite, but yeah, the DRC is just one example. It's not the only country in the world that has these sorts of unfortunate issues and histories of corruption. But
it'd have to be one of the best well-known corrupt countries, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think that just
It'd
really
be up there.
That just really ties to how resource abundant it is. It has so many, really phenomenal assets that just kind of should be mined. You could argue for, a lot of great copper assets like what we're talking about here, lithium assets, which would be great for the world going forward.
I suppose there are ones that work. There's the Kibali gold mine over there. That's massive, been going for a while.
Kamoa Kakula that Robert Friedland and Ivanhoe mine, actually together with Zijin are mining, is just a phenomenal asset, and it's good to see these things get into production. And it sort of brings about the question of the influence of China in the region. So they had the huge Belt and Road initiative that I think started in 2013 that President Xi brought about, and their influence in Africa has just grown phenomenally over the past 10 years, and that's, trains, roads, critical mineral assets being bought and developed. And yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say that the West has been pretty slow to the party, and now we're trying to do a bit of catch up and build better relationships and get these projects going and have relationships with the West rather than just with China.
Well, I mean, I think China has a different, set of rules that they can abide by when it comes to doing business in Africa, and that set of rules or lack of rules might be, better equipped to actually form alignment with certain governments. And I think you see a little bit of that in this quote that AVZ, they actually say in one of their responses to the ASX list of questions, they say, the company is concerned the continued activity of the hostile non-state actors may influence the decisions of the key authorities in DRC in a manner that is contrary to applicable law and materially adverse to the interests of the company.
It makes me think of the interview we had with Warren Irwin. So we'll chuck the link to that one in the show notes if anyone hasn't seen it. But that was a really great chat. And he really spoke about the different rules that they're able to play by, If you have to pay a police officer or someone that's pulled you over and you're the director of a public company on the ASX or on the, Canadian exchange, that's it. You've breached your the sort of oath you've taken as a director of a public company, and you can be sued and so on for that. And yeah, like you just sort of highlighted in what AVZ have said, they don't have to really play by the same rules, do they?
Not at all, mate.
What about the political stability going forward over there? So
yeah, mate. So and I think that's another interesting point, right? There's a general election coming up on the 20th of December. And so, I mean, there could be some change in political regime and that might have an influence in how all of this unfolds as well. And I think we should also keep in mind that the DRC has the word democratic in its name, so we know that election will be conducted in the most democratic way possible, Matty.
Of course. Isn't China democratic as well?
All the countries that need to tell you they're democratic.
The Democratic People's Republic of North Korea as well. So.
Yeah, that's it.
Cuba,
Right.
is that one?
Right, top stuff, boys. Well done. So I guess back to Trav's prediction was Zijin it'll settle and Zijin will have a stake. Stay tuned, mate. That could be one of those things. I picked it, says Trav. I picked it.
It might be years before, we get to celebrate that one. But.
We'll keep the alerts on our watch list.
Podcast mightn't exist by then. But yeah, very good. Well, I guess we'll have to wait another 6 months until they bring out another announcement, possibly.
Yeah, we'll keep the alerts on so they don't slip past us. But
Friday afternoon, everyone. Stay tuned for your AVZ headlines.
perfect. Good stuff,
Right,
guys.
anything else, boys? Sensational deep dive as always. Money Miners, take it easy. Oh, should we tell them about the group?
Yes.
Facebook group. There is a Money Miners Facebook group. Come and join.
Hootaroo.
And then you get in the Hootaroo chat. Engage with the hosts and the fans.
That's it. We'll share it in the YouTube
love it.
and all the comments and stuff.
Oh, mate, and we should say too, we want to do a session at a pub. We want to do a live show at a pub
Yes.
on a Friday afternoon one day. Does anyone have a pub or have a mate with a pub, preferably in the city?
We just want to sit there. We're going to do a live show and drink pints and talk shit to everyone.
And do a live
have
show.
laugh. Yeah, it'd be bloody great. So anyone want to host us? The Paddo will be all right. So anyone own the Paddo? Any of the listeners own the Paddo? Let us know.
That's it. Hootaroo, guys.
Hootaroo, Money Miners.
Hootaroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.